Kunda appears because it's the tears of Radha and Krishna. Radha Kunda, Shyama Kunda. Shyama Kunda is the tears of Krishna, and Radha Kunda is the tears of Radha. So, but in the material world, it's a little bit different. The material world, Kamsa sent one of his good old buddies, friends, Arishta, he was a bull demon. Actually, he was a mystic yogi. He took the form of a bull. And so he came to try to kill Krishna. So it was described he was so big that practically his horns and his tail would touch the clouds. He was a very big bull. So anyway, so he began to attack Krishna, and Krishna just like whipped him around, beat the whatever out of him, and killed him. And then the gopis said to Krishna that you've done something very bad, because he may have been a demon, but he was a bull, and the bull, the principles of religion, is the father of religion, is dharma, right? So, to kill a bull is one of the most sinful things, to kill a bull or a cow, because if you kill a bull or a cow, you have to take birth from every single hair on their body. So if you kill a chicken, though, you only have to take one birth. So better to kill chickens, right? Don't kill bulls, just eat chicken. So therefore the gopis said, Krishna, we're not going near you again, because you have killed the bull. So you're too sinful. You've lost your caste. So they said, you have to go and bathe in all the holy places before we're going to accept you again. So what Krishna did is he dug a little hole in the ground. He used his flute, actually. And in that hole in the ground, he actually called all the holy places. The holy places filled that hole or that big pond. And they offered respects to Krishna, and Krishna went bathing in it. And Krishna went bathing in this Kund, which was called Shyama Kunda. And what happened is that Krishna said to the gopis, you can now bathe in there too, and get purified if you like. And the gopis said, no, we're not going to bathe in your Kund, because your Kund is actually contaminated because you bathed there. And you had the sin of killing a bull. And that sin was dumped off into the water of the Kunda. And in fact, that's not true, but it is true simultaneously. First of all, Krishna had no sin. But secondly, when people who are sinful bathe in holy places, they actually dump off their sins into the water of the holy place. Like when people bathe in the Ganges, their sins go into the Ganges water. And so the Ganges wants to purify herself. And so she has sadhus come in who take away the sins. You understand? So the sadhus take away the sins from the holy places, the waters and the holy places. And the bad people put the sins in. So we shouldn't put any sins in. We should take the sins out. So, of course, Radha could never become contaminated. The Ganges doesn't either, but this is a pastime. So they said, we're not going to bathe in your Kund. We're going to make our own Kund. And so they saw where Ashura had dug his heel in, and then they started to dig out with their different jewelry, like the earrings and everything like that. That's why their original Kund is called Kanchana Kund. So they kept digging it out. And Krishna said, well, if you want some water, you can borrow my water. And they said, your water is contaminated. We're going to get our own water from the Manasa Ganga. That's the big lake we saw the first day. And so they formed what's called a brigade. You know what a brigade is? That's how originally in India, maybe in Fiji too, they call the fire department the fire brigade, right? But brigade actually means like a whole line of people passing buckets from one to the other. No fire departments function like that anymore. Now they have trucks. You see a fire?
Yeah, trucks with hoses on it.
Yeah, that's right.
And they have a ladder.
And ladder and pumps and everything. But originally, they didn't have motors. So they had to have like 100 people lined up, and they would take buckets of water and pass it to the next person, pass it to the next person. And that's called a brigade. Now you know a new word. And so then they would come, so the gopis formed this big brigade of gopis from the Radha Kunda area, Radha Kunda, Shyama Kunda area, to Manasaganga. And they were passing the water, but somehow or other it was real difficult to fill the Kunda. So they couldn't do it. And then,
I think the mud was soaking the water.
yeah, I mean, by the time you pass it, it spills out of the pots and everything like that, isn't it? You ever try to pass a pot real fast full of water? It just spills out, so by the time it got there, it was almost empty. There was a few drops. And to fill a whole lake was impossible. So then the holy places, personified holy places, all the rivers appeared before Srimati Radharani and begged that they could fill her kund. And Radharani agreed. They touched her feet. Radharani agreed. And then the water of the Shyama Kunda overflowed and filled the Radha Kund. And that's the story. And so then, 4,500 years later, most people didn't know where Shyama Kunda and Radha Kunda were. Actually, practically no one knew where it was. It was just two ponds in a field outside of a village called Arishta Grama. Arishta Grama means the village of Arishta Shura. He'll go on for a second. And then, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Arishta Grama and he asked the villagers, where is Radha Kunda Shyama Kunda? And the villagers said, we don't know, but there's two ponds out there. One is called Gauri Kund and the other one is like Dark Kund. And Lord Chaitanya ran into the middle of the paddy field, that means a rice field.
Go. Get him called down.
That's all right. I mean, the lights will come on. You don't have to raise the thing because then it gets cold in here. So Lord Chaitanya went into the middle of the paddy fields and started bathing himself in the rice fields. Rice or wheat or whatever they were growing there. See? It's a miracle. And then Lord Chaitanya declared to everyone that was Radha Kunda Shyama Kunda. Later on, we have Raghunath Das Goswami came. It's an interesting story. Raghunath Das Goswami came to the Radha Kunda area. He was living there and chanting. He knew it was Radha Kunda and Shyama Kunda, obviously. But he had a desire to build an actual wall around the Kund and have bathing places for everybody, because if anyone wanted to bathe then, they had to walk through muddy fields and the mud would come up to their knees. So what he did is he was thinking, I need some money, but then he thought, this is not proper. Sannyasi shouldn't have money, especially Raghunath Das Goswami. He had money when he was a kid, and after that he renounced everything. So he thought, this is not practical. Meantime, when he was thinking like this, all the way in the Himalayas, there was someone worshipping Badri Narayan, the great devotee who was worshipping Badri Narayan, which is in Badri Ashram. You know where Badri Ashram is? No. It's in the Himalayas. And so he was going to offer, he was a rich man, he was going to offer like a whole pile of gold to the deities. But that night he had a dream. And in that dream, the deity said, well, if you actually want to give me this donation, you go to Radha Kund, which is in Braj, and you give it to my devotee, Raghunath Das Goswami. So he traveled 1,000 kilometers from the Himalayas, all the way down to Radha Kund. He said, where is Raghunath Das Goswami? He found him, gave him the money. And with that money, the kunds were excavated. That means they dug out further. And when they dug out further, they found the original Kanchana Kund that was dug by the gopis. And that Kanchana Kund could be seen when they excavate Radha Kund. Nowadays, when they actually drain it to clean Radha Kund, they can actually see the same Kund that was dug out by the gopis. And of course, there's a whole history. And of course, the gopis dug out the Kund. Later on, Brajanava, who was Krishna's great-grandson, son of Aniruddha, he also made steps around the Kund, above Kanchana Kund. So there's actually several levels of steps that have been made by kings or Krishna's devotees throughout the years. So that occurred almost 5,000 years ago too. So anyway, so then Raghunath Das Goswami dug out, and then there was a king later on who made more steps, and then recently there have been more excavations around Radha Kund. And that's the Radha Kund we're going to today. It's the holiest place. It's as dear to Krishna as Srimati Radharani is. And there's no holier place than Radha. Prabhupada cautioned us against, let's say, being too complacent around Radha, because when the devotees first went there, they went and they started having water sports in Radha. Like chicken fight. You know what chicken fight is? No, you don't know what chicken fight is. None of you know what a chicken fight is? A chicken fight is where one person gets on another person's shoulders and in the water, and they fight. Whoever makes the other one fall down wins.
How do they fight?
How do they fight? With their hands.
You've seen it, Keshav, you've done it. पानी में कंधा पे चढ़ के तब फाइट करो एक दूसरे से. Wrestle in the water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's wrestling, but you get up on someone else's shoulders. You've seen that.
Yes, he's done it.
It's called chicken fighting. I don't know why it's called chicken fighting. It's like chicken. So devotees were doing that, and then Prabhupada, he got very angry. He said it's like kicking on Radharani's head. So when you go to Radha Kunda, he said you just take the water, 3 drops of water on your head. That was Prabhupada's instruction. Although when devotees get more mature, they can go bathing, but there are some sadhus at Radha Kunda who bathe only by putting their lota in the water and pouring it on their heads. They never actually put their feet in Radha Kunda. Some sadhus who actually live there who do not want to commit the offense of touching their feet to Radha Kunda. So they take the water, lota, and they stand on the steps, of course, above Radha Kunda, and then they pour it on their heads. So it's a very, very sacred place. The water is like liquid Radharani. Because we were there the other day, but today we're going to be seeing more places in Radha Kunda. Many great personalities. Raghunath Goswami excavated Radha Kund and Shyama Kund. Shyama Kund looks real strange as far as the shape, because Raghunath Goswami had a dream, and in that dream the Pandavas said that we're living there as trees, so don't cut us down, so just make the kund around us. So that's why Shyama Kund is so unusual in shape. But Radha Kund is square. Radha Kunda is square, but Shyama Kunda is sort of like oblong in shape. Okay, so we'll go in 5 minutes.